Hello, fellow captains. My name is the Doctor, and well, I do Star Trek Online videos a lot. Today, I am going to give you my review and opinions on the new Agents of Yesterday expansion, combined with the 23rd Century Starfleet Faction. This is the third expansion in Star Trek Online, and I now have the ability to give you opinions because I have fully leveled a character all the way from the start of the 23rd Century Faction as a temporal agent, in fact, and leveled that character all the way up now to level 60. So therefore, I have the complete experience of the 23rd Century Faction from beginning to level cap. I have not actually finished every mission yet. I'm actually at the point where I can start the Delta Quadrant missions, but as you all know, all the missions on the 23rd Century Faction character are the same as the regular Federation 25th Century missions after a certain point. So all those missions end up being the same anyway. So I don't really need to play those missions to have the full experience. But as you can see, I am level 60 now. I am a fleet commander. This is my character here. This is Ruby Rose. She is a fleet admiral now, level 60, as you can see on the 23rd Century Faction. I have the complete, almost the complete, ooh, that's the wrong thing I'm trying to do here. I need to do, not chronoton buffer, wrong one. I need to do equip on temporal transponder. That's where I'm trying to get to. I have almost the complete temporal agent also completed. You will note I have every single temporal probe has been found in every mission. So I have that experience. I have, of course, the up to level 50 ranking finished for the temporal recruit. I don't have all the storyline missions finished. I am still working on that. But regardless, all that's going to do is give my character more equipment and more gear as I do those things. But the point is, I have done all the unique missions related to 23rd Century, including all the Agents of Yesterday missions, all of the Yesterday's War missions, everything under Future Proof that was added. Even though I haven't played those here on this character, I have played them on other characters, so I'm familiar with those stories. And now I can tell you what my experience has been like on this character. Now, before I jump into the actual review and opinions of what I think of this third expansion to Star Trek Online and this faction itself, 23rd Century Faction, I'm going to jump into a Word document. That's right, I am going to switch out a game and we're going to go look at a Word document that I have put together first. Now, why is this important? Well, I want to compare. I want to compare the first expansion of Star Trek Online. I want to compare it with the second expansion of Star Trek Online. And then I want to compare those to this third expansion of Star Trek Online. I want to see how many new missions were added with each expansion. I want to see if any new factions were added, any new adventure zones, and what other things were put in this game or added to this game via those expansions, and get straight down to the facts. F-A-C-T-S, the facts. I want to let the facts speak for themselves before I give you my opinion, because I have a very strong opinion about this expansion and this faction of Star Trek Online that's been added. And before I give you that opinion, I want to get to the facts. F-A-C-T-S, the facts. Again, that is what is going to back up my opinions. So, without further ado, I'm going to switch out of the game now and merge on over to a Word document. So just stay with me through that. I'll try to get through it as quickly as possible. And in it, what I've put together are a bunch of comparisons. So if you will please just hang on, I will make this transition very smooth for you guys. Okay, everybody, welcome back. Here we are in a Word document. Lovely, isn't it? I know all of this text seems a little daunting right now, but I've tried to break this down as easily as I can so we can get the facts across. The first things are to talk about what expansions have been released into this game. The first one, of course, was Legacy of Romulus. That came out on May 21st of 2013. The second expansion to the game was Delta Rising. That came out on October 14th of 2015. And then go down to the bottom here, and here is the third expansion, Agents of Yesterday, which came out on July 6th of 2016. So we had an expansion in 2013, quickly followed up by a second expansion in 2014, just 1 year later. There's an expansion, and then it took a little bit longer to get this one out. But here comes the third expansion this year in 2016. That's what we have in terms of expansions. These are not season updates. That's a completely different thing. I'm not going over season updates. I'm going over expansions. So let's look at the first expansion ever to come to Star Trek Online. It was a very exciting time. People were really looking forward to this, and Cryptic gave us a lot of stuff for this expansion. Way more than you would get for a season update. And this made a lot of people very happy. So, first let's get to what I think is one of the important features of an expansion, and that is how many missions they are giving us. And by missions, I mean playable missions that you go and you can play. Now, these can either be faction-specific missions where only one faction can play that mission, or these can be non-faction-specific missions where anybody of any faction, KDF, Federation, Romulan, whoever, can play that mission. So I had to break it down into those two categories. What I found in my research, and by the way, these numbers may be off by like 1 or 2, but they are pretty much on the money. Unique new missions that were faction specific in the first expansion, Legacy of Romulus, there were 29, that's right, 29 total Romulan only unique specific missions, which took you to like Commander level 30. So quite a bit of leveling on the Romulan faction up to level 30 with like 29 missions, a ton of stuff to play. Only 4 of those missions were tutorial missions, so that means the rest of them, 25 missions, are main storyline missions. 4 of them are the beginning tutorial, and then 25 is the main storyline that only Romulans can play. So nobody else can play those missions, only Romulans. Completely unique. That's 25 storyline missions, counting the tutorial, 29 missions to play. That's huge. Okay, well, that's not all they added in that expansion. They also had 14 KDF only unique specific missions added to the roster for KDF Faction, taking you to level 20. 7 of those are tutorial missions, and 7 of those are unique storyline missions. Now, this is added to what was already there. There were already unique KDF missions, of course. This is what has been added as of the expansion. So if you count those tutorials and those new 7 missions added to the KDF-only faction, that's 14 total missions for the KDF. So here's the Romulans getting almost 30 missions. Now here's KDF getting like 14 missions. That's 2 of the factions right there that are getting a huge update. Well, I guess for the Romulans it wouldn't be an update because those are brand new, but you know what I mean. Now, they also added non-faction specific missions. Most people will forget this, but the Legacy of Romulus expansion is where Star Trek Online introduced the Nimbus 3 Adventure Zone planet. That's where you go to that Nimbus 3 planet, and then there is a 6-mission story arc called the Wastelands on that planet. This is when this was added. This was added during the Legacy of Romulus. So that is 6 new missions, and there were also 4 dailies on that planet you may not be aware of, but they are there. 6 new missions there within a whole new world adventure zone. I wanted to make that very clear that they had this Nimbus 3 adventure zone, because you're going to see that replicated when we head over to Delta Rising. Okay, so if you add up all of the new missions in Legacy of Romulus, they came out with about 49 missions. That's counting the tutorials, 49 missions. Now, if you do not count the tutorials, it would be about 38 missions. Still a huge number as an expansion. I mean, that's almost as much as some of the faction's missions in total. That is just incredible. That is a whole lot of missions, okay? So that's already impressive. Now, other things they added beyond missioning for this expansion was, of course, the playable Romulan faction called the Romulan Republic, and it was playable with Romulans and Remans. However, at around level 10, you did have to ally with either the Federation or the KDF, and at that point, you gain all the missions from that faction. However, you can still play all those unique Romulan missions on that Romulan character. Okay? Also, of course, unique to the Romulan faction is you can fly Romulan warbirds. You get the Romulus Command Facility and the Flotilla, which is only accessible by Romulans. So that's all unique. And then other things here, I'll zoom in. I don't know if you guys can read this or not. I didn't even think about that. I'll just zoom in here. Other non-specific things, or non-specific Romulan things added to the expansion was you got the revamped KDF tutorial, a whole new KDF tutorial, all new story content for KDF as we went over, levels 1 through 20. A whole new Nukara reputation system was also added. The Nimbus 3 Adventure Zone. This is when customizable traits and unlockable additional traits, also came to the game. A little bit of a modified UI, some new lockboxes, a new ship console. This is where the warp drive was introduced in this expansion. So a whole new console of warp drives. And Drozana got an interior makeover. Those are some of the key updates in Legacy of Romulus, in addition to the 49 missions they released and the whole new playable faction. Okay, now I marked here at the bottom a whole new planet-wide Nimbus 3 Adventure Zone with missions, because as you're going to see, that's going to be replicated in the next faction, but not in our latest faction, and I wanted to make that a thing. So as you can see, Legacy of Romulus was huge. However, it is because of this having to ally with either the Federation or the KDF at level 10 with the Romulan faction that a lot of people don't consider it a full faction. A lot of people will call it a half faction because you are not allowed to remain of the Romulan Republic specifically and only and uniquely to that character beyond level 10 when you have to make that decision. You just simply are not allowed to do that. Whereas a Federation character, if you make a Federation character, is a Federation from start to finish. And a KDF character is aligned with Kronos KDF from start to finish. However, a Romulan character is not. They do not get to keep their faction-specific, governments or whatever. You are still actually technically part of the Romulan Republic, but you have this alliance with the Federation, and you're basically just a Federation player after that, or a KDF player. It's pretty much all the same, except for the fact that you get to fly the Romulan warbirds, of course. But your home base is either ESD or Kronos at that time. What I think they should have done with the Romulan faction is they should have allowed you to ally with either the Romulan Republic or the Tal Shiar. And then that would be your faction government, your home base for the remaining of the game. Either you would go to a unique specific Romulan Republic base, or you would go to a unique specific Tal Shiar base. I would consider that a full faction, similar to Federation and KDF. So already, even though Legacy of Romulus introduced a new faction, a lot of people, including me, don't consider the Romulan faction a full faction because of the rules that they've had you to ally with Federation or KDF. But now let's look at some of the others here and we can compare these. Now let's look at the second expansion, Delta Rising. This was also a big update a lot of people were looking forward to and really not expecting. It kind of just came out of nowhere, and all of a sudden they were doing it and they went full throttle on it, and it was awesome. Now, there were no unique missions added that were faction specific because the Delta expansion itself was not a new faction. No new factions were being introduced. It was just playable missions and new content. And they went real heavy on the new content and the new missions. So if you look at the Delta Quadrant storyline, you will see that there are 19 new missions. This is what the expansion added. 19 new missions that are non-faction specific. So every faction can play them. But it goes beyond that, because similar to Legacy of Romulus, they introduced a Kobali homeworld adventure zone. So a planet-wide adventure zone you can go down to and do missions on. And you'll see that they had 10 missions added to the Kobali homeworld adventure zone. That's a 10-mission story arc that even has repeatable missions at the very end that help you get marks and some of those items you need, like an Iconian item and a Delta Quadrant item, to get those for the reputation systems. In addition, there are also associated open missions with each of those missions, plus 4 other found missions on the planet, and even still 7 other open missions you can find on the planet. So the Kobali Prime homeworld is just teeming with all kinds of missions. It's similar to New Romulus in that way. Now, remember, New Romulus was not introduced with Legacy of Romulus. New Romulus actually came out before Legacy of Romulus. It came out as a season update, so we're not counting that planet as anything. But Kobali Prime was pretty filled with missions and things to do on it. So that was a pretty big update as well. And so that, combined with the Delta Quadrant storyline missions, equals about 30 missions. The official number from the wiki is 30. So it's about 30 missions. If you count the open and found missions in Kobali Prime, I guess it would go up higher. But still, it's in the 30s of missions. So if you compare that to Legacy of Romulus, if you compare just the missions without the tutorials, and we don't count tutorials, then that would be 38 missions on Legacy of Romulus and 30 missions on Delta Rising. That, my friends, is extremely close. 38 in Legacy of Romulus and 30 on Delta Rising. That is really close. Both expansions had a very similar number of playable missions. Now, if you count the tutorials, then of course Legacy of Romulus takes the lead, definitely, with 49. But still, those are not miles apart from each other. Those are still a substantial number of new missions available to the game that people can play. Other additions. The Delta Quadrant was not just for those missions, obviously, but other additions. They had a lot of new things come out for Delta Rising in addition to that, including the new space map, new worlds, the Delta Quadrant, repeatable patrols, of course. We all know how that goes. Kobali Homeworld Adventure Zone with a mission story arc. Tons of new races were introduced. They had more than 10 new races introduced in the Delta Quadrant. I mean, they had to design those characters, right? They had to design all those new characters and using, what is known from the Delta Quadrant. So that's a lot of work right there, just introducing all those new races. They're not playable, but actually some of them are, like the Talaxian. You can actually have a Talaxian, I think. So there's a lot of work went into that. an Intrepid class revamp. This is where the level cap increased. We went from level 50 to 60, so that in itself is a huge upgrade, right? Huge upgrade for the game. That's something you would expect from an expansion. Tier 6 ships were introduced. This is another thing you would expect from an expansion. A whole new level of ship with new abilities. A whole new mastery system on those ships. This is where intelligence bridge officer seating was introduced. So all new bridge officer seatings and powers that were never there before. That's something you would expect from an expansion. The gear upgrade system was introduced. Captain specializations, the secondary deflector, was even introduced there. So there, there were other little things here as well I did not add, but those are the main key points here. So either way you look at it, the Legacy of Romulus had more missions, but Delta Rising had more smaller things, and still a substantial number of missions. So I'll just zoom in on that real quick. If you did not get to read the second page here, you can pause the video and kind of look what I wrote down. But that's what I have there for Delta Rising. Okay, now let's go down to Agents of Yesterday. This just came out this year. Now, this expansion included a new playable faction similar to Legacy of Romulus. Or is it? Let's look at the facts. Let's just stick right to the facts. If you count the number of new missions added for the 23rd Century Starfleet Faction, these are unique missions, just like, let's go back here to the Legacy of Romulus real quick. Oops, I zoomed out too far. Up here in Legacy of Romulus, unique new missions, faction specific, there were 29 for Romulus and 14 for KDF. Come down here to unique missions, faction specific to Agents of Yesterday, 23rd Century Starfleet Faction, you have 11. 11 new missions added for the 23rd Century Starfleet Faction. And I don't recall, it's either level 10 or level 20. I forgot the level that you go. But similar to the Romulan faction, you have to ally with something. And in this case, you are forced to ally with the Federation, 25th Century, and you have no choice there. There is no KDF option on this one. So you are forced down a single path and don't even have the choice that the Romulans had on Legacy of Romulus. Now, if you don't count the tutorial missions, okay? Remember, we did that up here too. We took 4 of the tutorial missions away, and we're left with 25 main storyline missions for the Romulan faction. If we do that here for 23rd Century Starfleet, well, you'll find that there are literally 6 tutorial missions. The rest leaves you with 5 missions under Agents of Yesterday as your main storyline missions. So let me repeat that again. There are 11 total missions under the 23rd Century Starfleet Faction. However, 6 of those are the tutorial missions. So if you strip away and take away the tutorial missions, you are left with 5 main storyline missions that are unique to the character, that only a TOS character can play. None of the other factions can play that. Okay, so that's 5. Compare that to 25 that the Romulans have as a Romulan character that only a Romulan character can play minus the tutorial. 25. 25 v5. Okay, that's the comparison. Now, if you include the tutorials, it actually comes out to 29 versus 11. 29 versus 11. And we go back to Delta Rising, it was 30 missions. So it's very close to the Romulan specific missions on Legacy of Romulus. But you come down to Agents of Yesterday, 11. And you take the tutorials out, and you're left with 5. So 6 tutorial missions, 5 main storyline missions that are unique. That's it. 5 for that faction. Romulans get 25. 23rd Century Starfleet gets 5. Okay. Well, let's look. They added more missions, right? We know this. They added non-specific, non-faction-specific missions for Agents of Yesterday. We know this. How many did they add? They added 5. 5 new missions. You'll find them under the Yesterday's War and the Future Proof. I think those are the 2 ones. I know for sure Future. I think it's Agents. I keep forgetting. One of them is one of the new storylines is like Agents of Yesterday, and one is called Yesterday's War or something like that. But anyway, the number's 5. They added 5 non-unique, non-faction specific missions. If you go up to Legacy of Romulus, you will see that total new missions added non-specific, non-faction specific was 6 new missions through an adventure zone and 4 dailies. And then, of course, the non-faction specific under Delta Rising is all they had, and it was like 19 plus 20, so 30 missions there. So if you combine everything that Agents of Yesterday came out with in terms of missioning, the total new missions added via the expansion is 16, counting the tutorials. If you do not count the tutorials, the number would be 10. 10! Okay, so counting the tutorials, counting everything, Legacy of Romulus comes out with 49 missions. Delta Rising comes out with 30 missions. Agents of Yesterday comes out with 16 missions. And you strip away the tutorial parts, and actually there's only 10 story missions. 10 that make a storyline difference, compared to 25 on Legacy of Romulus and 30 on Delta Rising. I think you can see where I'm going with this information. Now here's the other things that this faction or this expansion also came out with. Playable 23rd century Starfleet Faction. We know this. I think there were 3 species. I forgot to look this up. I think there's obviously the human. One of them was a Vulcan, or was it the Tellarite? No, not Tellarite. Maybe it was Tellarite. And it was that pig face thing. I don't know. You guys know. That's not really that important here. But the fact is, it's a playable, quote, they call it a faction. However, similar to a Romulan, you do have to ally, but you are forced to ally with the Federation 25th Century Faction, and you have no choice, whereas at least the Romulan faction has the choice between KDF or Federation. A 23rd century Starfleet character has no choice. Now, they did introduce a new Earth space dock and sector space zone that is unique to the TOS character as you're leveling those 5 missions. However, you quickly outgrow that, because once you hit that certain level and you have to ally with Federation 25th Century, bada bing, bada boom, you're on regular old Earth space dock in the 25th century with everybody else. So those are a very limited time, very limited use. You spend less time on those than you did on the Romulan flotilla in the Romulan one. Now, they also introduced the Temporal Operative Specialization and the Temporal Defense Reputation, a new lockbox. And here's what I find interesting when I was looking this up. I really didn't expect this. There were more ships released in this expansion than any of the other expansions. I counted 14 new ships between the TOS ships, the 26th century ships, and the 31st century ships, and the new shuttle, I think, that was released. I counted 14 new ships that they released with this expansion. So this expansion got more ships than it has missions. I mean, period, end of story. I mean, the facts speak for themselves. I cannot make this up. There were more ships released for this expansion than there were missions released for this expansion. Somebody needs some money. Seriously, it almost sounds like they're desperate trying to sell us ships. 14 ships and 11 missions total, including the tutorials. Not including the tutorial, well, 16. Actually, okay, if you count the tutorials, there are technically 16 missions. So 2 more than the ships. But if you don't count the tutorials, then that's only 10 unique storyline missions versus 14 ships. Pretty much they went heavy on the ships. Maybe they should have gone a little heavier on the missions. I'm just saying. So those are the facts, folks. Those are the facts. You will also notice I have no underline here about a planet-wide adventure zone because it doesn't have one. In Legacy of Romulus, you get the Nimbus 3 adventure zone with missions and dailies. With Delta Rising, you get Kobali Prime adventure zone with missions and dailies. What do you get with Agents of Yesterday? Nothing. Nothing. It's not there. It doesn't exist. Bada bing, bada boom. What a thing. Okay, well, I think you can understand where I'm going with this and what I'm trying to say here. But these are the facts, right? I mean, I simply broke it down into the facts. The facts speak for themselves. Every expansion has been on a decline since the first one. Delta Rising is not far off from Legacy of Romulus, but it is a decline. And Agents of Yesterday expansion is farther down on the list. Much less released for this expansion. And even the faction. The faction is even smaller than the Romulan faction. People already thought the Romulan faction was a half faction. So what must the faction be on Agents of Yesterday? Well, it must be a quarter of a faction. It must be I don't know what you call it. A mini faction. Tiny faction. Or what I like to call it is a befitting name, is just a playable featured episode series. Remember when Cryptic used to release featured episode series and they would come out with 5 episodes and they would call that a featured episode series? That is what Agents of Yesterday looks like to me. It is a playable featured episode series. 5 to 10 missions that you can play as a new character, and that's it. That's it. That's how I look at it. Let's go back into the game, though, and I will talk a little bit about my experiences leveling, and I will give you maybe some advice. I don't know if I can give advice, but I can try, right? So let me go ahead. Okay, hello, captains. So here I am back in the game again on my character, 23rd century Starfleet character. Now, if I sounded like I was being extremely negative, let me turn the tables a little bit and start this off positively and say that I extremely enjoyed the TOS missions that they had in the 23rd century Starfleet faction. I immensely enjoyed them. We'll look through them real quick. You had, of course, Explore Earth Space Dock. That's really just, one of those things. In the Shadow of Cestus, we got to go back to the Gorn. The old Gorn. The old school Gorn. The ones seen in TOS. The ones that Kirk fought with his fists. And this episode was reminiscent of having to find resources like Kirk did to build a weapon. It was very nostalgic and fun. Just a lot of fun, right? Painful Omens, K-13, the start of a whole new mystery that they're building in Star Trek Online. K-13 is coming back, and there's going to be missions about it, and I'm looking forward to that. Also, we got to see those things that attach to your back, like we saw in the original episodes, and they had to fight off with light or whatever. Return to Babel. I mean, come on, classic TOS episode. I mean, just incredible. Tangled Webs. That was neat and fun. The Battle of Caleb 4. A really great space battle. Very tough, actually. A lot of fun. Boy, I enjoyed all of those missions. Come under Yesterday's War. The Core of the Matter. Going back to Galorndon Core. That was fun. Now, these other ones, of course, are non-faction specific. Every faction can play these, but Vorgon Conclusions, Terminal Expanse, even the stuff they added here, Temporal Reckoning, Ragnarok, the Temporal Front, if that's one they added, I'm not sure. definitely Reckoning and Ragnarok. Those were fun missions, okay? Don't get me wrong. But really, yeah, these beginning TOS missions, even the tutorial, I mean, you can't go back and play it, but man, that tutorial was really great. You got to see that old episode, you know, where they had to electrify the shuttle. You know, that was just so cool. So don't get me wrong, I had a blast playing these missions, and I recommend that everybody do it. It's worth it. If you are a Star Trek fan, and especially a fan of the TOS series, play the 23rd century character. Get it all the way up to where you go into the future and you're here on ESD in the 25th century. Play it up to that level, because you will enjoy it. If I'm going by this level grade here, it looks like, yeah, you have to get to like level 10. Yeah, okay. So yeah, it is like level 10. Or maybe it's 20. I think it's 10. I don't know. One of those. That doesn't really matter. That's besides the point. But anyway, the point is, I guess you probably will be 20 by that point. I'm not sure. Anyway, I think you had to be 20 to be a temporal recruit is what it was, if I recall correctly. But I'm not including, now you'll notice I'm not including temporal recruit or the Delta recruit in any of this. And the reason for that is because that was a limited time only. It's not a permanent feature of the faction or the expansion. It was a limited time thing. Both of them, the Delta one and the temporal one, they were both limited time, so I didn't mention them. Because if it was a permanent feature of the faction or a permanent feature of the expansion, then I would mention it, but it's not. It's done, it's over, and it's not going to repeat itself. The Delta one is done and over, they've never repeated it, and the temporal one is done and over, and they'll never repeat it. But if you created your character during that time, then you will be a temporal recruit, and that will help you get other rewards and stuff like that, which actually does enhance the faction. And I would say without it would make it even less interesting, to be honest with you. I wish it would be a permanent feature of the faction, to be honest. I think it would make it more enticing and appealing if they made the temporal recruit a permanent feature of the faction. That's my opinion. And I think they should, because there's not a lot here, and they need more. They need to add more to it. So that could be them adding more to it if they made it a permanent thing. That's my opinion. I wanted to get that out there. I wanted to make that point, because I think that's important. This faction needs more stuff, and that temporal recruit stuff would have been excellent to keep as a permanent feature of the faction. That would make it enticing, something that the Federation 25th Century or a KDF character would not have. That I could get down with 100%. Okay, anyway. So, as I said, missioning, leveling up was fun. I had a great experience, and being a temporal recruit was definitely, I was better off for it. Now, if you create a new character now, you will not be a temporal recruit, so you can just forget all of that stuff. And basically, once you forget all of that stuff, once you get to this certain level where you're on ESD and allying with the Federation in 25th century and back here in the future, all the storyline missions are the same. Everything is exactly the same. The Klingon War, the Wasteland, the Romulan, Cardassian, Breen, Borg, Solanae, Yesterday's War, Delta Quadrant, Iconium, Future Proof, 100% the same. No storyline differences. You won't even feel like you're playing a 23rd century character anymore, except for the transporter effect, except for the beaming effect, and the fact that my UI is yellow. I would completely forget that I was a 23rd century character. It felt just like playing a regular Federation 25th century character. Did not feel like playing a TOS character anymore. And that is where I think the faction really loses itself, because you don't get a sense that you were from the 23rd century or that you even had an impact on anything. Nothing's different. Nothing's changed. It's pretty much all the same after a certain point. Just the same old, same old, same old. Been there, done that a million times, bought the t-shirts. You know what I'm saying? So while I did have fun at the beginning, the fun factor quickly died for me, because it was just the same as any other character I've leveled up in the game. There's no difference. Nothing was there to entice me. Except for the fact that they did have the new TOS starships. Now, these are only Z-Store ships, so these are not free ships. And that was the other sad part here. These ships you did not get for free. You had to fly the regular Federation 25th Century free ships you get, as you get a token for each grade you level up. I'm trying to find the bundles for these, because you can buy them in a bundle. I'm going to end up scrolling through every ship here, aren't I? And there's a lot. So I think you guys know what I'm talking about. Individually, we can look at the ships. Like, here's the temporal cruiser. I guess if we do it by tier, it'd be easier. So you start out, you can if you have the USS Enterprise, you can use that. But you start out with, why isn't my ship on here? Well, you know what? It is on here. It's in my, I got a better idea. Let's do this. Let's go to the shipyard, and I'll show you every ship I have. And I have kept every ship from level 1 to level 60. So I can show you what using those Z-Store ships would look like in your shippy thing. So, you start out with the utility cruiser. I think that's what you start out with, is that not? Temporal escort, utility cruiser. I forget which tier is what. Yeah. You start out with the utility cruiser. That's your first ship, like your tier 1 or tier 2 ship. Gosh, I'm forgetting. It's been so long, folks. I guess it's tier 2 ship. Nope. The Daedalus is the tier 2. So it's your tier 1 ship. So you start out with the utility cruiser as your tier 1 ship. So that one you do get for free, I think. But if you want anything above that, looking here at the Z-Store, if you want a different tier 1 ship, you could purchase the Enterprise or an NX class or something like that. But you don't. But the one you get for free is this utility class, utility cruiser. So that's the first one. You do get that one for free. But once you get to tier 2, that's where you have the option to get the TOS Daedalus. You can see it here. And I have it somewhere here. So I flew this as my tier 2 ship. So what made the 23rd Century Faction fun for me was flying each of these TOS ships. Now, the difference between this faction and the Romulan faction is the Federation faction can fly these ships. So it's like either the two factions, 23rd Century or regular 25th Century Starfleet, can fly these TOS ships too. So any those two factions can fly it. I don't know if Romulans or KDF can fly them though. I haven't tried it. But I would guess a Romulan allied with the Federation would be able to fly it too. That would make sense. So KDF may not be able to fly these, but at least a Romulan allied with Federation or a 25th Century Federation or a 23rd Century Federation can fly these ships. Now, that's very different from the Romulan faction because only the Romulan faction can fly the Romulan warbirds. I don't think anybody else can fly the Romulan warbirds. So that makes their faction a little more unique. If you want to fly those warbirds, you got to have a Romulan. Whereas here, you don't have to have a 23rd Century Starfleet character to fly these TOS ships. You could be a 25th Century character, or you could be a Romulan on the Fed side and fly these ships. So that lessens the uniqueness of this faction a little bit, and its importance. Moving on, of course, you got the Daedalus. The Tier 3 ship is the Perseus class. So I got it somewhere. There it is right there. Perseus class. Tier 4, you've got the Gemini class. Tier 5... that's the one I have now, the Ranger class. Flying that right now. It's the Ranger class. And then, of course, the Tier 6 ship is you go to these new 26th century ships like the Paladin, the Sagittarius, or the Theseus. There is no Tier 6 TOS-looking ship, except that if you own them, you can make these ships look like it by using their skin, but it's just a skin overhaul. It's nothing real different about that. So what made this TOS faction fun for me was flying each of those TOS ships at each tier. And right now I'm working on the tier 5 ship. I'm trying to get all the Terran gear on it and really upgrade my ship and make it powerful. And I'm going to make a video about this ship. I already have one video, check it out, about this ship, or more than one video. Maybe I got a couple of videos. Oh no, I at least got one on it. And I'm going to be making more videos on this ship once I get it completely upgraded. I want to see what it can do all maxed out now that I'm level 60. But anyway, that has been kind of what has interested me in this faction, was just flying those ships for the first time. But again, I don't have to fly those ships on this character. I could have rolled a new 25th century character and flew these ships on that new character too, because they're just Z-Store ships. They're not part of the ship requisition. They're not free ships that are specific to the faction. For example, on a Federation 25th century character, if you go to Lieutenant Laurel, I guess even on this character, the free ships you get, you know, are the standard, not those ships, no, those, like this ship here, like your cruiser, your escort, science vessel, you know, the ones that you get for free with a token as you get to each grade. Those are completely the same on this 23rd century faction versus a 25th century Federation faction. They're completely the same. There's like no difference. So I guess the point I'm trying to make is the 23rd century faction has no unique starships that solely work on them. There is not a, like the Romulans have the Warbird. The 23rd century Starfleet has nothing. If these TOS ships were in ship requisitions and you could only get them for free on a 23rd century character, then that would be unique, and they would have something there. They'd have something enticing for you to play the faction, because you could only get those starships on that character. You could only fly those starships there. But then they would need a tier 6 variant for sure. But they don't have that, of course. Those ships can be flown practically anywhere. So you're left with really nothing unique or specific to this faction. And that's really the crux of my problem here with this faction. There's not a lot that's unique or specific to it. I mean, aside from the transporter effect, name something in this faction that is unique and available only to this faction that no other faction can have. I can't think of anything. There's the initial tutorial and 5 missions. And other than that, I mean, you can get every costume, you can get every ship, you can get every piece of gear. There's no specific unique gear that you cannot have on any other faction. You can have those twin phaser banks from the ship on a 25th century character. You can get those. I think there's even a mission reward for them in one of the one of those missions. You know, Rosana missions. What a mission storyline is that called? I guess they have it under the Klingon War? Nope. You know what I'm talking about. Where is those missions? Where are those missions here? Yeah, they are under Klingon War. Skirmish, Spin the Wheel, What Lies Beneath. One of those gives you those like twin phaser bank things, the blue beams from the Enterprise. The TOS Enterprise. So you can even get that from a mission reward. So practically everything you can have is available on this faction. Nothing's unique about it. There's no reason to roll the character to fly a unique ship. Like the Romulans, a lot of people love to fly those scimitars. The scimitar is a Z-Store ship, isn't it? Now, is the scimitar, can that be flown on a Federation character? I don't even know. No, I don't think they can. Your character can't use this item. I think you have to be a Romulan to fly scimitars and stuff. Yeah, I can't fly. I can't fly any of that. Your character can't use this item. So, see, that makes the Romulans unique, because you have to be a Romulan to use those ships. So if you want a scimitar, you want to be BA with a scimitar, you got to roll a Romulan. But the 23rd century Starfleet character cannot claim anything like that. I can't say, oh yeah, they got this awesome ship, so I'm going to roll that character so I can fly that ship on this character. Nope. Nothing like that. Nothing like that at all. All the gear, the same. Everything's the same. The sound effects are different. The transporter is different. You get the 5 missions up front, which are different. That's it. That is why I stress that if they could keep the temporal recruit thing as a permanent feature of the faction, it would be advantageous. It would give the faction a reason for you to roll the character. If there's no reason to roll a character, then who's going to roll a character? I will give you a reason, though, and that is simply to play at least to the point where you come to the future so that you can play those TOS missions, because they're fun. But after that point, you'll probably forget the character exists. It's good up to that point, but then after that, what's the point? There is no point. Really, the only reason why I rolled this character is for you guys. So number 1, we could see what the TOS missions were. I could play them and record them. And number 2, so I could get all the temporal recruit rewards. And I feel that's what a lot of people rolled a 23rd century character did it for, is solely to get those temporal rewards. Because let me tell you, those rewards are pretty dope as a temporal recruit. Pretty dope. So I think a lot of people just rolled the character at that time just to get those temporal rewards. I know I sure did. But that's over now. You don't get that. Nobody gets that anymore. So there's no reason to roll this character except to play those 5 missions and have some fun for a little bit. You know, other than that, there's no staying power. This faction has no staying power. So in that, I have to give this faction a fairly negative review, and I think you all see that or saw that coming. I don't consider this a full faction. I'm sorry. I cannot, in my conscious of consciousness that I just made up that word, I cannot call this a faction. What I can call this is a playable featured episode series. I got to play some TOS missions as a seemingly TOS character in the past, and I got to play like 10 missions or whatever, had some fun, and then it was over. It was a playable featured episode series, and that is, I'm putting a stamp on that, putting a period at the end of that sentence. Period. End of story. You can agree with me if you want. You can disagree with me if you want. Be as angry as you want. It doesn't matter. I will never see the 23rd century faction as a faction. I just won't. It's fun for a little bit, but then there you go. You're just like a regular Federation 25th century character. Nothing's different. I said I was going to try to give you guys some advice. I really can't think of any advice because it's just like leveling up anything else. Was there anything I encountered that was odd or weird or anything worth mentioning? Trying to think right now, actually. Like I said, not really. If I didn't have the Z-Store TOS ships that I had, I would have just used the regular Lieutenant Laurel free ships from Ship Requisitions. So it would have been all the same. So there would be nothing really weird there. I guess the only thing is that, if you're not a lifetime subscriber or gold member or whatever, they leave you with a tier 5 ship at level 40, and you don't get a tier 6 ship. That was my complaint in another video I made. Free-to-play players don't get free tier 6 ships. They're stuck at tier 5 ships at level 40. So, we'd encounter that. Obviously, that could be a problem. But, I mean, I really don't have any advice because the experience, my gameplay experience, was the same as rolling any other Federation character I've ever rolled. Other than having the starship that I'm using, the TOS ship, it felt completely the same. I ended up with the same gear I always use on every character. For example, look at this. I've got an Advanced Herald anti-proton beam projector. I love that weapon. I mean, that's what I ended up on this character with. I also went ahead and got a Terran Empire Sonic Phaser High Density Beam Rifle I'm playing with. Kind of fun. I like it because it does kinetic damage, and that is pretty good versus the Borg. I don't have a ground kit or ground set yet on. I'm using the neutronium laced combat armor for my mission and the dielectric oscillation personal shield. I don't have a ground set yet, but I'll probably end up with Mako or adapted Mako or something like that, you know. Or maybe the Terran. Or maybe I'll go for the Terran gear. There's nothing specific to the 23rd century character here. Now see, if there was something like a 23rd century ground kit, body, shield, and weapon, a whole set, I would take that in a heartbeat. I would definitely try that out. But there's nothing like that for me to try. So I'm just stuck with any other old regular gear I get from missions or whatever. Oh, I do have this one unique piece because I bought the bundle. I get the 23rd century environmental suit. But I rarely use it, obviously. There's only a couple of missions where you use it, and I really don't do a lot of those STFs where you have to use it. So, yeah, I just end up with what all my other characters end up with gear-wise. There's just nothing really that separates this character from my other characters. I just have another Federation character now. I already got 13 of them. I got a lot of characters, so I don't really need it. But I like it for the fact that, again, I get the temporal rewards, temporal transponder here. I'm going to get through. I am going to continue working on it for the rewards. That's really the only reason, because remember, these rewards carry over to all your other characters. You can go to that Agent Cray on the other side here, and you can talk to him and pick up these rewards on any character that you have. So that is really what has benefited me the most, is just doing the temporal agent stuff. But right now, if you roll a new 23rd century character, you won't get this anymore. So that's kind of pointless for new people playing this. Kind of pointless. That's why I wish this were a permanent feature. It would just make it so much more enticing. But whatever. Whatevs. Whatevs. This video went on a little longer than I wanted to. I was going to try to make this a short, quick, concise video. Got a little winded there, but I have a lot to say about it because I have invested my time and money into this game quite a bit. 6.5 years. I was in the beta of this game. I've been in this game since the beta. I bought the lifetime account. I did not buy the Delta Rising pack, and I did not buy the Romulus pack. However, I did decide to buy the Agents of Yesterday temporal pack, so I could get all the ships and everything. And that's the first time that I ever bought an expansion pack. And so I've invested, I've put my time and money into this game for that. I think my opinion carries a little bit of weight. I mean, I've done what I can with it. Spent the time, I spent the money. I had fun, but I mean, I don't know that it was worth all the money I spent on it, to be honest with you. I guess for the ships maybe, but otherwise it didn't really help me out all that much. Pretty much the bundle was just for the ships. So really this was a ship expansion. That's all this was a ship expansion. At least for me. Got me some new ships to play with. I am enjoying the 31st century ships. I'm going to do reviews on all of them. I'm going to do a review on every 26th century ship. And I've been doing the reviews on the tossed ships each time I level up to a new ship. Hopefully you all have seen those videos, but I have done videos on every ship as I've leveled up. So check the playlist on that and you will see where I've done that. You can check that out. So I don't know. It's a thing, but I do think that the expansions have decreased in overall content since the first one. The first one was massive, right? The Delta one, a little less, and then they dropped way down the ladder for this one. And then I would not consider the 23rd century Starfleet Faction a faction. I would consider it a playable featured episode series where you get to play some unique missions for a little while as a unique character. And for that, it's fun, but after that, it's just the same old, same old. That's where I'll end this video. Again, you may disagree with me, you may agree with me, you may be angry with me. However you feel, post your comment below and let me know what you think about all this. I would love to hear your comments, good or bad. And as always, everybody, thank you for watching, and stay tuned for the next one.